Hello everyone. Today we'll be starting with the development of urinary system. So in this specific learning objectives is you should be able to describe the development of kidney and its related anomalies and the development of bladder and urethra with the related anomalies. So the urinary system, it begins to develop before the genital system and it consists of the kidneys which excrete the urine, the ureters which convey the urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder, the urinary bladder which stores the urine temporarily, and the urethra which carries urine from the bladder to the exterior of the body. So initially, at around third week, when there was differentiation of the three germ layers, we'll see the mesoderm. This one is the notochord or the neural. This one is the neural tube. This one is the notochord. This one is the paraaxial mesoderm. Lateral to it is the intermediate mesoderm, and this one is the lateral plate mesoderm. So the intermediate mesoderm, it is a longitudinal strip of the intraembryonic mesoderm lying on either side of the notochord between the paraaxial mesoderm and the lateral plate mesoderm. So after this embryo, it has been folded. Now it is an intraembryonic coelom has been formed. So this intermediate mesoderm, it forms a longitudinal elevation of the mesoderm along the dorsal body wall on each side of the dorsal aorta or the dorsal mesentery of the gut. So this longitudinal elevation is called the urogenital ridge, which will be giving rise to our urogenital system. So this urogenital ridge now gets divided into a medial part and a lateral part. The medial part of the urogenital ridge is forming the genital ridge, and the lateral part of the urogenital ridge is forming the nephrogenic cord. So this nephrogenic cord will give rise to the embryonic kidney. Now then there are three sets of embryonic kidney. The first set is the pronephri, which is rudimentary and the structures are never functional. Now the second set is the mesonephroid, which is well developed and functions briefly. And the third set is the metanephric kidney, which will be the permanent kidney. So firstly, the pronephroid or the pronephric kidneys. Now these are bilateral, transitory, non-functional structures which appear in the human embryo in fourth week. So they are represented by a few cell clusters and tubular structures in the neck region. The pronephric ducts run caudally and they open into the dilated part of the hindgut, which is known as cloaca. So the pronephroid soon degenerate, and however most of the length of the pronephric ducts, they still persist and they will be used by the next set of the kidneys. Now similarly, when the pronephroids they will diminish, the simultaneously the mesonephric kidneys they will be appearing. So these are the large elongated excretory organs. They appear late in fourth week and caudal to the rudimentary pronephric kidneys. The mesonephric are well developed and they function as interim kidneys for approximately 4 weeks until the permanent kidneys they will develop. So mesonephric kidneys they consist of small glomeruli and the tubules. The mesonephric tubules they open into their respective mesonephric ducts, which were originally the pronephric ducts, and these mesonephric ducts they open into the cloaca. So the mesonephri, the glomerular part, they will degenerate towards the end of the first trimester. However, the tubules they remains and they become the efferent ductules of the testis. So the mesonephric duct have several adult derivatives which will we see in our later slides. And it is an important question also, which is frequently asked. Then comes the metanephric kidney, which develops early in the fifth week of intrauterine life and it starts function approximately 4 weeks later. So urine formation it continues throughout the fetal life. So since it is opening into the cloaca, the mesonephric duct, and which will be forming the ureter. So initially, the urine which is formed, it is given out by the cloacal membrane as it will rupture around the 8th week, and it will contribute to the amniotic fluid. So amniotic fluid is regularly swallowed by the developing embryo also. So generally, the kidneys are main function of the metanephric kidney is to produce the amniotic fluid rather than it is excretory in function. It becomes excretory only after the birth. Till then, the excretory function is carried by the placental barrier or the placenta of the mother. Now the different sources of development of the permanent kidney. So the permanent kidney develops from the two sources. First one is the metanephric diverticulum or the ureteric bud, which is an outgrowth from the mesonephric duct near its entrance into the cloaca. And another one is the metanephric blastema or the metanephric mass of the mesenchyme, which is derived from the caudal part of the nephrogenic cord, which is derived from the intermediate mesoderm. The urogenital ridge was there. There was a urogenital ridge. So the lateral part of that urogenital ridge was forming the nephrogenic cord. So this nephrogenic cord will form the metanephric blastema. So what is the fate of the ureteric bud? As it elongates, the ureteric bud, it penetrates uh, the metanephric blastema, and then the stalk of this ureteric bud, it becomes the ureter. As the kidney will ascend, and there will be elongation of the posterior abdominal wall also of the embryo, so it leads to the elongation of this ureter. And the cranial part of this ureteric bud, it goes repetitive branching to form the collecting tubules of the metanephric duct of the metanephric kidney. So over here, the ureteric bud, it will give rise to the ureter, and this bud will give rise to the renal pelvis, the major and the minor calyces. Then they will form the collecting ducts and the collecting tubules. So collecting tubules, this collecting part of the kidney, it is contributed by this ureteric bud. Then what is the fate of the cranial portion of the ureteric bud? The caudal part was forming the ureter, and the cranial portion, it will divide dichotomously. So the first four generations will unite, they will form the major calyces. Then the second four generation, they will unite and they will coalesce to form the minor calyces. So this ureteric bud, it is inducing the metanephric blastema to, to convert it into the metanephric blastemal cap. That is, it will form the excretory portion of the kidney under the induction of this from this ureteric bud. So end of each arched, this one is the collecting tubule. So end of this arched collecting tubule, it will induce clusters of mesenchymal cells in the metanephrogenic blastema to form small metanephric vesicles. Right? So these vesicles, first they assume a comma-shaped structures. Later on, they will elongate and they will become S-shaped structures. And their distal part, they will form a glomeruli, and they will be invaginated by the blood vessels. So a total functional glomeruli will be forming. So the tubules differentiate into, these are the tubules, they will differentiate into the proximal convoluted and the distal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle as well by continuous elongation of these nephric vesicles. So each distal convoluted tubule contacts with this arched collecting tubule, and then they will become confluent or they will become continuous with each other. So like this, this is a uriniferous tubule with an excretory part contributed by the metanephric blastema and a collecting part which is contributed by the ureteric bud. So to summarize, there are two portions of a uriniferous tubule, the collecting portion and the excretory portion, or of a kidney. So the excretory portion is derived from the metanephric blastema, which contributes to the formation of Bowman's capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle and the distal convoluted tubule, and whereas the collecting portion of the kidney, it is contributed by the ureteric bud, which will form the caudal portion will form the ureter, and the cranial portion of the ureteric bud will form the venal pelvis, the major and the minor calyces, the collecting ducts, and the collecting tubules. So, a urinary ferrous tubule, we have seen it is embryologically having two parts. One is derived from the metanephric blastema, another one is the collecting tubule derived from the ureteric bud. So, the ureteric bud will form the collecting part, which is derived from the mesonephric duct. So, it will give rise to ureter, the venal pelvis, the calyces, the duct, and the tubules, and the excretory part will contribute to the formation of metanephric blastema, which will undergo and it will form metanephric vesicle under the induction of this ureteric bud. It will form a C-shaped loop, then an S-shaped loop, and finally elongation of these loops will lead to formation of proximal convoluted tubule and the distal convoluted tubules. And finally, the kidney will be formed. Now, the lobulation and functional maturation of the kidney. So, it occurs between 10th and 18th week of gestation, and the number of glomeruli they starts increasing till 32nd week, when an upper limit is reached. Now, the fetal kidneys are subdivided into various lobes. So, the lobulation usually they disappear during infancy as the nephrons increase and they will grow. So at birth, the nephron is formation is complete and the kidney is having 4 lakhs to 2 millions of the nephrons. So the increase in the kidney size after birth results mainly from the elongation of the proximal convoluted tubule and as well as increase in the interstitial tissue of the kidney. So nephron formation is complete at birth. Uh, although the GFR begins at approximately 9th fetal week, functional maturation of the kidneys and increased rate of filtration occurs only after the birth because it is attaining its blood supply as well, which is important for the glomerular filtration rate. So while urine formation is important, I've already told you that it doesn't add to the excretory function until the birth. So it is mainly forming the amniotic fluid and it is increasing the content of the amniotic fluid. So if there is a renal agenesis, when there is a lack of formation of the ureteric bud, it will fail to induce the metanephric blastema. In that condition, the renal agenesis will be there, kidney will not be formed, and this is usually associated with the condition which is known as oligohydramnios, that is less amniotic fluid. So this leads to Porter's sequence in which there is deformed limbs, there is wrinkled skin, and there is abnormal facial appearance with the low set ears. So this one is the Porter's sequence. Then we will come to the ascent of the kidney. Initially, the kidneys, the metanephric kidney, they are the pelvic organs. You can see, and they are facing ventrally. The hilum, it is facing ventrally. Now, as the abdomen and the pelvis grow, the kidneys, they gradually come to lie in the abdomen, and they also start moving farther apart. So as they ascend, the relative ascent is mainly because of the growth of embryos body caudal to the kidneys. The hilum, which is initially facing ventrally, because of the rotation of the kidney, they will start facing anteromedially. So kidney, it will undergo 90 degrees medial rotation. So by the ninth week, the hilum, it is directed anteromedially. So eventually the kidneys, they become retroperitoneal and they come to lie on the posterior abdominal wall, and the hilum, it will face medially. Now there are certain anomalies which is seen in ascent of kidney. First one is the ectopic kidney. So when one or both the kidneys, they may be abnormal in position. So most ectopic kidney, they are located in the pelvis, but some lie in the inferior part of the abdomen as well. So pelvic kidneys and other forms of ectopia result from the failure of the kidneys to alter position during embryo growth. So when there is failure of ascent of kidney, it will lead to a condition which is known as ectopic kidneys. So first condition of the ectopic kidneys is the pelvic kidney, in which they are close to each other and the lower poles may fuse. So a discoid kidney will be formed, and such kidney is known as a pancake kidney. So such a kidney will receive the blood supply near the blood vessel by the nearby blood vessels, mostly since it is in the pelvis. So they receive its blood supply from the internal or external iliac arteries. Then is crossed renal ectopia, in which the kidney of one side migrates to the opposite side. They may either fuse or they may remain unfused. So in such cases, the developing kidneys fuse while they are in the pelvis. The one kidney it attains its normal position, carrying the other kidney with it. Then there is an horseshoe kidney, which is in the 0.2% of the population. The lower poles of the kidney fuse. So a large U-shaped kidney, it lies in a hypogastric region anterior to the inferior lumbar vertebrae. So normal ascent of these fused kidney is prevented. Why? Because they are caught by the root of inferior mesenteric artery. So a horseshoe kidney is generally asymptomatic, and it is normally related to the Turner syndrome. 7% of the people with Turner syndrome will have horseshoe kidney. Now the blood supply of the kidney, as the kidney will ascend, it will change its blood supply. The blood vessel lying in close proximity with the kidney, it will supply the developing kidney. So the position, once the position becomes fixed, uh, which occurs only when they come to lie in contact with the suprarenal glands. So suprarenal glands prevent the further ascent of the kidney. So now they will receive their most cranial arterial branches from the abdominal aorta, that is the definitive renal arteries. So when they are in the pelvis, they might receive their blood supply from the median sacral artery, then in the lumbar region from the lateral splanchnic branch of the aorta, and so on. Now the accessory renal arteries. So 25% of the adult kidneys may have 2 to 4 renal arteries. So these are also known as supernumerary renal arteries, and they usually arise from the aorta, superior or inferior to the main renal artery. So important why the knowledge of accessory renal arteries is important, because these accessory renal arteries, these are end arteries. So if the accessory artery is damaged or ligated, so that part of the kidney, it will become ischemic, and accessory arteries are approximately twice as common as that of accessory veins also. Then there is unilateral renal agenesis. So it occurs approximately once in every 1000 newborn. So males are more affected, and it occurs when there is failure of induction of metanephroblastema from the ureteric bulb. So there may be unilateral renal agenesis, which is asymptomatic because other kidney undergo hypertrophy, and it supplements, or it it makes up the function of the agenetic kidney, which is not formed. Then there is a bilateral renal agenesis. This is associated with oligohydramnios, which I've already told you. That is, there is small amount of amniotic fluid will be forming. So it is generally incompatible with the postnatal life also, because of the associated pulmonary hypoplasia. So the infant has characteristic facial appearance, has eyes which are widely separated, they have epicanthic folds, they have row-set ears, nose is broad and flat, and the chin is receding, and there are limb defects. So this is a typical Potter's sequence. So most infants with the bilateral renal agenesis, they die shortly after the birth. So I told you what is the cause of renal agenesis. Mainly it results when the metanephric diverticula or the ureteric bud fail to develop, or the primordia of the ureters degenerate. So because in the absence of the ureteric blood, but it will not induce the metanephric blastema, and thus it results in the failure of development of the kidney. Then there is a malrotated kidney. When the kidney fails to undergo normal 90-degree uh, medial rotation, then uh, apart from the ascent, there may be a malrotated kidney as well, or it may rotate to the opposite side in spite of uh, in if it does not rotate 90-degree medially, it might rotate 90-degree laterally also. So such condition is known as malrotated kidney. So abnormal rotation of the kidney is often associated with ectopic kidney. Now a question arises why there are constrictions in the ureter. When you read about the ureter, there are two important constrictions of the ureter. So ureteric bud, it forms two dilations. One is the pelvic dilation and another one is the lumbar dilation. So as the ureter elongates, these dilations fuse and this ureteric bud elongates. So these two dilations represent the constrictions of the adult ureter. These two dilations will fuse, and the place they will fuse, they will form a constriction. Then is the duplication of the urinary tract. The duplications of the abdominal part of the ureter and the venal pelvis are common. These anomalies result from the division of the metanephric diverticulum, that is the ureteric bud. If it divides, it leads to the formation of bifid ureter. Also, it will lead to incomplete division of the metanephric diverticulum, which it is um, sorry, also there may be a divided kidney. It may be associated with a divided kidney as it will be inducing the metanephric blastema. So it may lead to incomplete division of the metanephric blastema as well as the diverticulum, which may lead to supernumerary kidneys. Then is the ectopic ureter. The ureter generally opens in the urinary bladder. Now in males, ectopic ureters, they open into the neck of the bladder or into the prostatic part of the urethra, or they may enter the ductus deferens or the prostatic utricle or seminal gland. In females, ectopic ureter may open into bladder, neck, urethra, vagina, or vestibule. So when there is an abnormal opening of the ureter in the not in the bladder but apart from it and in its close vicinity, then it is known as ectopic ureter. So what are the causes of the ureter? Most common sign and symptom is the incontinence. Now it results when the ureter is not incorporated into the trigone in the posterior part of urinary bladder. So instead it is carried caudally with the mesonephric duct and it is incorporated into the pelvic portion of the urogenital sinus. So then it leads to a condition which is the ectopic ureter. Now, there are cystic kidney diseases in which there is autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease, which is diagnosed at birth or in utero by sonography. So, the kidneys, they contain small cysts. Generally, this condition is incompatible with the birth, but now the cases of survival is increases because of kidney transplantation. And there is multicystic dysplastic kidney diseases, which has relatively good prognosis, and there are fewer cysts which are seen in this type of diseases. And it was believed that these cysts occurred uh, when the result when there was failure of fusion of the metanephric diverticulum derivatives with that of the metanephrogenic blastema. That is, the collecting tubule might not fuse with the DCT part of the metanephric blastema. But now it is believed that cystic structures, they are wide dilations of the parts of the nephron, continuous nephrons, particularly the nephron tubes. So the development of bladder and urethra we'll study in the next session.